Good morning to you. This is Angela with Parkrose Permaculture. It's a beautiful, cool 4th of July day in Portland, Oregon. I have been working on picking berries, so my fingers are really berry stained. And I was just getting ready to pick my green beans for dinner tonight. And I wanted to share with you my favorite tip for growing green beans. It's something someone shared with me several years ago, and I don't know how I hadn't learned it or figured it out on my own before. So maybe this is something that will be useful to you and maybe something that you hadn't known. So if you look at my garden, if you are new to watching my videos, I have 1/4 acre permaculture garden in Portland, Oregon. So this is the backyard, and I grow annual veggies here, but I also grow annuals in the front yard mixed in with my perennials. So the form of gardening that I really like to employ in the front yard is a mixed polyculture food forest where annuals and perennials are tucked in together. And I do that here in the backyard as well, but I have this little potager back here, this little area that I just grow annuals in, although I keep sneaking perennials in it. There's a few blueberries and rhubarbs and things in here. But that's because this is a really sunny area of my garden and I keep it open for growing annuals. So I have a patch of bush beans here. I have multiple batches of bush beans in the front yard and pole beans. I have bush beans back here and pole beans here, but I want to talk about a little patch of bush beans over here. So bush beans are such an easy veggie to grow, but they are veggies that are, they're finite in their growth habit and that they're basically determinate, right? So they bloom for a period of time. So you can see here, they start blooming at the bottom, and then, again, forgive my berry stained hands, they bloom at the bottom, and then the newer and newer blooms grow out to the end, and eventually they'll stop blooming. So it's traditionally recommended that you plant bush beans in succession, and I used to do that. I used to go around and plant a patch of bush beans and then another patch 2 weeks later and another patch 2 weeks later, and it takes up a lot of space in the garden. But what I do now is I plant my bush beans, and you can see this is a mix. Again, I was just using up old seed packets, so all kinds in here. Blue Lake, haricot vert, I'm not even sure what all of these are, just a mix of little odds and ends I had left over because bush beans, if you store them well, the seeds are viable for years and years. So I have these little beans, and once we get to the end where the last of the little beans are being produced on the very end and there's no more blossoms, most people pull the plant, and you can do that. You can feed it to your ducks and your chickens. You can use it as compost because beans fix nitrogen in the soil and they have nitrogen in their tissues, and when they die and you cut them back, the roots release nitrogen into the soil. You can see here's another variety that purpley blossom. I really like to grow purple beans. I have them in another area. I find that purple bush beans are more resistant to slugs than the green beans when they first get going. I find that true for lettuces too. I'm not sure why the red lettuces tend to have less slug predation in my garden than the green ones. Okay, so let's take a look at what to do when our bush beans have stopped flowering. I have a little kale here I'm letting go to seed, by the way, at the edge of my bush bean bed, but let's look underneath. So here we have some bush beans that my dogs have trampled. They kind of fell over into the path, and that means that they're no longer producing. So what I want to do is pretend this is a bush bean that has ended flowering and you're not getting any more flower or fruit set on it. What you want to do is come in here and cut it back. Okay? So I've left one leaf, but as long as you don't cut it all the way back to the ground and you still have these nodes here on the side, it will leaf out again even if you cut it all back. Here's another one that I did. So when you do that, what you end up doing is much like when you are coppicing a nut tree to help it live forever, or you're heavily pruning like my elderberry, something that is no longer productive. When you cut this bean plant back, it will start flowering and producing all over again, and you'll get a whole fresh blush of blossoms and a whole new round of fruit. So you don't actually have to pull up your bean plant and start again. And this will, because it's already got a good strong root system, and because it is already well established and got a good spot going in your garden, it will flower and fruit much earlier than if you had replanted with fresh beans. And then you are using fewer beans in your garden, and so you don't have to buy as much seed. So I hope that helps you all. I hope that's a little tip that helps you extend the life of your bean harvest and reduce how much seed you have to buy, knowing that you can just go in when your beans are no longer flowering and just cut them back low and watch them shoot back up and give you a whole nother round of productivity. All right, I hope you enjoy the rest of your weekend. I'll be back soon.